Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I'd like to say that tonight with Vincent Brown has been replaced by this gala karaoke concert in aid of the boss, namely myself, Charles J. Hoy. We call it Who Wants to Make Me a Millionaire? So while you're all signing those blank checks there in front of you, thanks Bertie, and sending them off to offshore accounts, myself here on the Continuity Wolf Tone Deafs will entertain you with an old favourite of mine. It's a ditty called Money. That's What I Want. When you're ready there, Gabby, Hain, a dough, a three, a car.
The best things in life are free.
But that'll all be changed by the PDs.
Now give me money.
That's what I want.
A lot of money.
That's what I want.
Other people's money.
That's what I want.
Oh yes, that's what he wants. Public adoration gives him a thrill.
But your slavish devotion won't pay my bills.
Now give me money.
That's what I want.
Offshore money.
That's what I want.
Untraceable money.
That's what I want.
Oh yes, that's what he wants. Money, you don't get everything, it's true.
Who needs respect when you're a parvenu?
I'll give me money.
That's what I want.
Donate your money.
Call it a transplant.
Conscience money.
No, that's fairly scant.
Oh yes, that's what he wants.
Now give me money. Right up front.
A lot of money.
I hate to be blunt.
Oh yeah, I want to be free.
No, money, you runt.
Oh, a lot of money.
Sterling, not punch.
That's what I want.
Oh, yes, give it to me hard currency, baby. That's exactly what I want.
Here's the money, no favors in return.
Whole lot of money, Ashi, you got it to burn.
I know you need money.
I spend it faster than you earn.
Oh, give me money.
Now you're starting to learn.
That's what I want.
Well, finally, Ahern. That's what we want.
You know, ladies and gentlemen, it must be one of the most amazing outbreaks of collective and selective amnesia ever seen by modern science. People from all walks of life with absolutely nothing in common but vast sums of money can't remember a single thing. The Alzheimer's Society should get a special funding from the government to carry out case studies on the people who are giving evidence to the Flood and Moriarty tribunals.
Mr. Ben Dunn, former financial controller of Dunn Stores, annual turnover £850 million.
I've just forgotten. I can't answer why I have forgotten, but I have forgotten, and I don't know why I have forgotten.
Mr. John Byrne, property developer and the man responsible for the concrete monstrosity known as O'Connell Bridge House, the old Hart building, which still earns Mr. Byrne millions of pounds in rent from the government.
How many other times did you give Mr. Traynor £50,000 or a similarly large sum for fees?
I don't remember.
Would you have done it more than once?
I can't recollect.
And those at the receiving end of the largesse also had some difficulty remembering?
Mr. Michael Lowry, independent TD for North Tipperary and former Minister for Transport, Energy and Communications, as questioned by John Coughlin, Senior Counsel.
So nobody in the bank ever raised the issue of exchange control with you, or the necessity of having central bank approval to open a deposit account abroad? Nobody ever raised that with you?
I've no recollection of that whatsoever, and it would have been raised.
Mr. Bertie Ahern, and Taoiseach and leader of the Fianna Fáil party.
I actually don't remember talking to Sean Fleming, but in all of these queries, here's the one I would go to.
Mr. Dermot Ahern, TD, Minister for Social Community and Family Affairs, as questioned by Gareth Cooney, SC.
Do you recall if the topic of conversation during that short car journey concerned the results of the recent election?
No.
You don't remember that at all, is it?
No.
Your mind is blank?
I've no recollection.
Some people saw it differently. Mr. Ray Burke, former Minister for Justice and Minister for Foreign Affairs, and the man who's handled more brown envelopes than en poste.
Mr. Chairman, I noticed in the transcripts that the word recollection or recollect is used 39 times on the first day and 36 on the second. And I think from counting it myself, I used the word 30-odd times myself to you.
Mr. George Redmond, former Assistant Dublin City Manager.
He said he would rather come to me than go to the law library. He always said that. I always remember him using those words.
Mr. James Dougherty, former Director of JMSE and the man responsible for the Flood Tribunal.
We're talking now about 11 years ago. And I remember it all, I'm telling you. And I have told the tribunal all of the facts.
And it's worth remembering that Mr. Dougherty was 82 and Mr. Redmond was in his 70s. Well, no problem with Alzheimer's there, then.
Finally, we come to Mr. John Ellis, TD, the man from Manor Hamilton Mart, and the farmer's friend.
Oh, Jesus, I was hoping you'd all have forgotten about me. Charlie Haughey's financial advisor, the late Des Traynor, was the man responsible for setting up of the offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. When Des was called to account in an untimely audit by the Grim Reaper, Pádraig Collery took over the running of the Ansbacher affairs. Now, Pádraig kept a coded list of all his clients who had money offshore.
Now, unfortunately, Pádraig gave a briefcase full of the secret documents to his secretary, Miss Keogh, who in turn passed them on to the Moriarty Tribunal. Pádraig's briefcase turned out to be a Pandora's box for over 100 well-respected members of Irish society. Mr. Justice Moriarty said,
Well, Mr. Collery, would you accept that this tribunal would have been barking up a substantially wrong tree if we had not obtained the documents in the briefcase in the most unforeseen of circumstances?
So there we have the tribunal barking up the wrong tree, Bertie Ahern up every tree in North Dublin, and a millennium tree stuck through every letterbox in the country. Well, who says money doesn't grow on trees?
Collery was coy of methods he'd employ to hide accounts a while on a far-off Cayman Isle.
I kept a secret code of money that was owed to folks who were caught up in that fateful episode.
I've got $1 billion in a bank
on a bamboo isle.
It's waiting there for me, thanks to Collery. Believe me, I've had a stash out there for quite a while. It's tax-free overseas, and the boys from Cab can't touch me. I've got $1 billion in a bank on a bamboo isle. But will I see it again? Not for a while. I've seen wrecks, plenty of wrecks, begging for an amnesty. But by heck, there'll never be a wreck like the revenue will make of me. They're gonna confiscate a great big pile of my billion in a bank down on a bamboo isle. My billion in a bank down on a bamboo isle. My billion in a bank down on a bamboo isle. Thank you. And now, ladies and gentlemen, this is the time of the evening you've all been waiting for. This is your chance. It's the sing-song. After all, we've all been conned. We might as well get a good sing-song out of it. Ladies, will you please join me on the day-o? And gentlemen, on...
Tribunal come and me wanna go home. Take it.
Day-o, day-o.
Tribunal come and me wanna go home.
Day-o, day-o.
Tribunal come and me wanna go home.
Money go into Guinness on my hand.
Tribunal come and me wanna go home.
Then it disappear. How did that happen?
Tribunal come and me wanna go home.
96, 97, 98 and crunch.
Hooyah! Tribunal come and me wanna go home.
96, 97, 98 and crunch.
Tribunal come and me wanna go home.
Day-o, day-o.
tribunal come and me wanna go home.
Day-o, day-o.
Tribunal come and me wanna go home.
Tribunal come and me wanna go home.
Me got a contract for you from Louis Walsh. She asked you all to sign up for him, you know.
Oh, but there was a terrible stink in the Doyle when the dreaded Ansbacher list hit the fan. First casualty was Dennis Foley, TD for Kerry and member of the Public Accounts Committee that investigated the dirt tax debacle. Poor Dennis told the tribunal,
I had requested statements, but I was shocked when I got the statements.
well, yes. What shocked you about them?
I was still hoping against hope, because the tribunal that was set up to investigate payments to various people, in particular Mr. Haughey, and it's a well-known fact that I wasn't a Haughey supporter, and we got some correspondence at the time to sign, but I had no intention of signing it.
No, I'm not dealing with that.
I just wanted to make that point now. I still believe that there was a hope.
You believe that?
I still believe at that stage that I wasn't an Ansbacher. No, I knew I had an offshore account.
You still believe?
I was still hoping.
You were still hoping?
Yep.
Now, why did you believe that you went to Ansbacher? I mean, give me the reason why you believed that, Mr. Foley.
Well, because when I discussed it with Des Traynor, when I invested that first day, he gave me the name of the company. And Des Traynor knew that I'd been a politician, that I should not be in an Ansbacher situation.
An Ansbacher situation was about putting money offshore, clouding its existence, using it in the most secretive way to ensure that it couldn't be discovered. Isn't that right?
That is correct.
And not declaring it to the revenue authorities in this country by Irish residents. Isn't that what Ansbacher was about, Mr. Foley?
That's correct.
And isn't that what you understood it to be about?
That is correct.
And you, as a TD participating in the business of the House, or as a citizen outside, always understood it to be that?
That's correct.
Now, you knew you had been dealing with Des Traynor.
That's right.
You knew your money had not been declared to the revenue, isn't that right?
That's right.
You knew that it was offshore.
That's correct.
And you knew that you had transactions in relation to it which were designed to ensure that it would never be discovered. Isn't that correct?
That is correct.
Armed with those simple pieces of evidence, I must suggest to you that that alone must have caused a question to be raised in your mind that I must be an Ansbacher if Des Traynor is in it and he did all of that. Isn't that right?
That is correct. Might I add, I was still hoping that I was not an Ansbacher.
I understand that.
I was actually sick of it at the time.
I know. You were worried about it, weren't you?
I was certainly worried about it.
You were very worried.
And stressed.
You went into denial about them, did you?
I certainly did. I certainly did.
Because it was now possible that you could be found out.
Correct.
And you didn't want to be found out, isn't that right?
No. I wanted to make my returns to the revenue commissioners.
You didn't want to be found out that you were in Ansbacher, isn't that right?
That is correct.
And you never wanted to be found out that you were in Ansbacher, isn't that right?
That is correct.
And you knew that you were in Ansbacher, isn't that right?
Well, there was doubt there. You see, I was hoping against hope.
You knew that you were in Ansbacher.
I don't want to dispute it with you now. I want to say that I was still hoping against hope that I was not in Ansbacher.
Mr. Foley is now, as they say, seriously considering his resignation from Dáil Éireann. But in the time-honoured tradition of this democracy, he is...
wishing and hoping and thinking and praying.
The eternal optimist that he is.
He's hoping that a member of his family will inherit his seat in the Dáil.
In this country, what you have, you hold.
Before he left the witness box, Mr. Foley made a point of telling the tribunal.
It's a well-known fact that I wasn't a supporter of Mr. Haughey. When the votes were taking place, it was recorded that I voted against him.
Mr. Foley may have forgotten that he had an account in the Cayman Islands, but he was certainly making every effort to put clear blue water between himself and Mr. Haughey. Just before he became Taoiseach in 1980, Mr. Haughey, with the help of his financial advisor Des Traynor, had a debt of £1.14 million, which he owed to the Allied Irish banks, taken care of. However, an outstanding debt of £110,000 remained, which to this day has not been repaid.
At his last public appearance before the Moriarty Tribunal, Mr. Haughey was questioned by Mr. John Coughlin SC about his failure to honour this debt.
You never paid that, did you?
Well, no.
And nobody, well, it was recorded as being a debt of honour, but nonetheless, a security was held in respect of the island of Inishviklon, and nobody asked you to pay that money to honour your debt of honour.
No, first of all, the security wasn't of any particular significance in those days, and secondly, well, first of all as well, there was no interest being charged.
There was no interest being charged.
And in fact, I think the letter makes some reference to that nothing was to happen about it. There was no transactions were to take place, isn't that?
That's right. Mm-hmm. It was considered a debt of honour, and I think what was expected that you, as a man of honour, would honour that debt of honour within a reasonable period of time. I think that could be a reasonable reading of the letter. Would you agree?
I think you're putting a lot of stress on honour. On the debt of honour, which I don't know what significance, what the bank attributed to it at that stage, but it's in the letter, but they never saw it. They never came to me, never mentioned it, and since I've, quite frankly, I've forgotten all about it.
Could I ask you this? You were head of government of this country at the time you did that. Could I ask you this? You signed and accepted those particular terms, Mr. Hoy?
Yes.
Yes, and you were head of government of this country at the time you did that?
Yes.
You held a position of honour, isn't that correct?
Yes.
And you were entering into an agreement with this bank to accept a debt of honour, isn't that correct?
That's what the letter says, yes.
And would you agree that a debt of honour is one which would be honoured by honourable people?
Yes.
And bearing in mind the position of honour you held, do you have any reason as to why you didn't honour this debt?
The debt is still there. I haven't dishonoured it.
They're gonna take your shirts by Charvet of Paris. They don't care if it hurts.
No, they can't take that away from me.
They're gonna seize your yacht. No more cock hardy. They'll impound the whole lot.
No, they can't take that away from me.
We may never see his likes again on Inishviklon. Even Thatcher's teapot he may have to pawn.
Didn't cost that much.
Winning the Tour de France.
Well done, Stephen, my son.
And champagne with Terry. The Goo-Boo utterance.
No, they can't take that away from me.
No, they can't take that away from Charlie.
Here's a few more things they can't take away from Charlie. Allied Irish Bank's loan, £750,000. Cayman Island loan, £500,000 sterling. PV Doyle loan, thanks PV, £300,000. ACC loan, £100,000. Now, am I forgetting anything there? Oh, yes. The leader's allowance. Hold the mayo there, boys. Oh, yes, and the young fella's chopper. Thank you, Dr. John, for that little check for the boy. It all comes to $8.5 million, give or take the odd shirt button.
We may never see his likes again on Inishviklon. Even Thatcher's teapot he may have to pawn.
He kept us out of the Falklands War.
You're no longer the boss.
Who says?
No P.J. Mara at your knee.
Thank God for small mercies.
He couldn't give a toss.
No, they can't take that away from me.
No,
they can't take that away from Charlie. You're a grand little girlie. Are you doing anything after this show?
sorry, no.
Oh, Vale Holmes and Baileys, those Bailey boys, they moan the whole tribunal long.
We cooked the books, honey. We paid ourselves.
They may have done the state some wrong.
Remember that fire in Finglas when it burned out, leaving nothing but ashes and foam?
You know we ain't to blame. They never lit that flame.
Yes,
we're the Bailey boys from Vale Holmes.
Won't you cop on, you Baileys? Won't you cop
What's the other
on?
one?
Down on the farms where they belong.
Tom's into Suffolk sheep. Nick bought a horse.
Just country boys all along.
Remember all those nights down in Conway's pub? Those councillors just wouldn't go
Oh,
home.
come on, for Christ's sake, you've enough drank.
While they were getting pissed, Tom and Nick made a list of the checks from Vale Holmes. Don't you phone home, you Baileys. Don't you phone home. They've got you taped on telecom.
When we phone psychics live to find out our fate,
They got it all on CD-ROM.
Remember all those times you rang Ray Burke? They've been through it with a fine-tooth comb.
they found out we were ringing.
Just to hear Ray singing.
Put your sweet lips a little
closer to the phone.
The lights on, but there ain't nobody at home.
Oh, holy God.
Well, the taxing master, Mr. James Flynn, has called the flood tribunal a
Frankenstein spiraling out of control.
But it could often be more like the Mad Hatter's Tea Party, as this reenactment of one of the more surreal cross-examinations of the whole proceeding shows.
Things get curiouser and curiouser by the minute, as counsel for the tribunal, Mr. Des O'Neill, as the Mad Hatter, asks the Mar Chair, Mr. Michael Bailey, to explain to him what 30 grand in an envelope might look like.
You saw the transaction of the handover, is that right?
That is correct.
And were these packages handed over individually, or were they both handed over together?
They were handed over together.
And can you describe, insofar as you can, the approximate size of either of these two packages?
They were, I'd said no, they were brown envelopes in about 9 inches by 7 inches, or maybe 9 by 9, you know, that type of a brown business type envelope.
Yes. Were they both the same bulk?
Oh, I can't recall that.
Were they both the same size, if empty, put it that way?
I believe they were.
And how bulky were they?
Well, they seemed reasonably bulky, I thought.
So the envelopes you are telling us about are 9 by 9 and quite bulky.
That's correct.
By reference to, say, the size of a 9-inch brick, can you say how thick they would have been?
To a 9-inch brick.
Yes.
Is there such a thing?
Well, you tell me, I'm not a builder.
I've never seen a 9-inch brick.
It's a 9-inch block, isn't it? Is there a 9-inch block, Mr. Bailey?
9 inches by 9 inches. Well, you know, there's a 9-inch block, but it's not a 9 by 9 block. It's a 9 by 4 block, and if this one was this might be a 9 by 2 block. You know, I'm not being no way. I am trying to.
No, I'm just wondering how thick it was.
I think it was probably about a 9 by 2 block of a brown bag.
And is that the sum total of both? Or
That's my recollection. No, a 9 by 2. If you want to put it into, listen, you want to be.
Is that the content of one envelope or the contents of two?
I believe it was the 2.
The two would have totaled that.
Yeah, the 2 would be 2 9 by 2s.
2 9 by 2s.
Blocks, yeah.
So the size of a 9 by 4 then in total, which is a block as far as I know.
Well, if you want, then we'd say a 9 by 4 cut in 2.
Right.
Now, by midsummer of 1999, photographers and journalists outnumbered tourists by 2 to 1 in Dublin Castle as Mr. Ray Burke, formerly Minister for Justice and Minister for Foreign Affairs, took the stand. Mr. Burke was cross-examined by Mr. Frank Callanan, senior counsel for Mr. James Gogarty, who asked Mr. Burke what happened to the £30,000 so-called donation made to Fianna Fáil by Jim Gogarty on behalf of JMSE.
Mr. Burke, I think you accept that you did not advise Fianna Fáil that you had received a political donation of £30,000 from JMSE.
That's correct.
We're not talking here about a couple of £100 or a couple of £1,000. We're talking about a payment of £30,000, Mr. Burke.
That's true.
So that we can take it the JMSE would not have received a Christmas card from you, from your party leader, or from the treasurer of Fianna Fáil.
I don't know whether they received a Christmas card from anybody, but they didn't get one. I didn't send them one.
By a strange coincidence, around the time that Mr. Gogarty and his entourage had journeyed like the three wise men bearing gifts to the minister, Mr. Burke had also received another donation of £30,000 from a company called Renix.
The Fianna Fáil party heard about this donation and went looking for their pound of flesh. And what they got was a bank draft for £10,000, which Mr. Burke brought with him to an election lunch at the Westbury Hotel.
Again, my recollection of the other. What happened was that at some stage over the lunch, what I had presented must have been looked at. It must have been, the scale was looked at it. At some stage on my way out, one or other said to me, our understanding is that you got more. And I said, that's as much as you're getting, good luck.
Since then, the Tribunal has established that Mr. Burke has over £100,000 in political donations stashed away on behalf of the Fianna Fáil party.
As Mr. Burke sat in the witness box, beating his breast and making a virtue of the fact that he'd kept £100,000 in safekeeping for Fianna Fáil for 20 years, Mr. Hanratty reminded Ray that he had once been Minister for Justice.
Did you think you were above the law?
Never.
Almost all the witnesses appearing before the tribunal have had some difficulty in remembering certain events.
Such as who gave them money, where it was handed over, how much was in the brown envelope, minor details like that.
But Mr. Burke was the first witness to remember exactly what he did with £15,000 he withdrew in cash from a bank in Jersey. He described the money trail precisely.
He even mentioned that he signed a document in Jersey just in case he got knocked over by the proverbial bus.
Unfortunately for Ray, the bus wasn't the only thing that didn't exist. None of the story he told the tribunal was true.
Mr. Burke, it's one thing not to remember something, but I suggest you to remember things which didn't actually occur at all. Is a very odd kind of failure of recollection. Did you dream it up?
No, I didn't dream it up, but obviously my mind had played tricks with me in relation to this one, Mr. Hanratty.
How could you possibly sit there with a straight face and tell this tribunal that all of that complicated, detailed story was a failure of recollection?
But of course, it was second nature for Mr. Burke to sit there with a straight face and tell porkies. He once informed the Dáil.
All the contributions I received are during the course of general election campaigns and not in between them.
And when Ray told the Dáil that the £30,000 from Gogarty was the largest donation he had ever received...
He also forgot to mention the £30,000 from Phil Swithton, the £35,000 from Oliver Barry, the £50,000 from Calabracchi, and let's not forget the £60,000 he received from the builder Joe McGowan in 1994!
And whatever else was collected for Ray at dinner parties in Cheltenham and Ascot by the mysterious Mr. Ernst Ottywell.
But as Ray proudly said of the donations,
they were given to me as the standard bearer of Fianna Fáil.
Some standard.
So when Jim Gogarty was asked how much money he handed over to Mr. Burke, should we doubt his answer?
I am satisfied that there was £40,000 in the envelope that Junior passed over and that I passed over, and I assume that Bailey's envelope contained £40,000. Now, there could have been feathers in it for all I know, but that's the way I looked at it.
So far as you were concerned, what was the total amount handed over on that occasion to Mr. Burke?
Well, I thought between the two of us, the three of us, we handed over £80,000. £80,000.
Now, one of Mr. Burke's benefactors was the builder Tom Brennan. Brennan is a self-made man and multi-millionaire who kept a low profile, and despite his vast wealth, he never lost his strong Mayo accent, or what some might call his cute whore charm. Tom shunned all publicity and kept well out of the spotlight until he tripped himself up over donations that he made to Ray Burke and was grilled like a kipper in the witness box. Tom was asked to produce documents of accounts to the tribunal.
Tom the builder, can he do it? Tom the builder,
No, he can't.